make that more clear. When we see the definitions later. That's not even...
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question on something else?
Sure.
We're talking about gravel as a special use to control fugitive dust. I love that word. Do we need to set a duration on special use permits in the code?
We didn't specify a duration for this particular use. Within the introductory language to the special use chapter, you have the right to set a time limit of whatever you consider is appropriate for the use.
So that might come as a recommendation on each application?
Yes, that's
okay.
what we currently do.
Okay. That's all I had.
Any other questions or comments, or otherwise there is an action we do need to take on this to move forward?
So the council didn't say anything, didn't say anything about gravel per se. I mean, well, I mean, as far as prohibiting it completely.
Actually, it was 3 that thought it was special use and 2
Yeah,
that
2 that prohibited, okay. But, okay, so that was gravel. Okay, I was thinking outdoor storage, never mind. So it's gravel, okay. So there wasn't really much of a consensus on that.
I think it just comes down to understanding how to regulate it on some level, and that's why they were happy to have you guys take it up and debate the matter.
Well, how do we regulate that right now? Do we have anything in the work, anything to abate dust at the moment?
The previous ones had those in the restrictions with the plan. Or had it in the special use permit, had them laid out, and then it had to be, did it not?
The proposed regulations have that in it. Right now, our code does not address surfacing for storage lots. It doesn't define a storage lot. We don't address gravel specifically anywhere, except for brief mentions here and there related to completely different things. So that's part of the purpose of this, is to give us some regulation so that we know how to handle these situations when people approach us wanting to do a gravel storage lot. Because right now we don't have storage defined, we don't have gravel defined, and so we need something to go off of.
Do you have any other comments on that? I believe they were.
Well, I think we were trying to leave it somewhat open to where we could work with the applicant to come up with a way to control it, because you run into dust control requirements on heavy construction projects, but they're kicking out dust constantly. If you have a gravel lot that's infrequently used, then the level of effort could be considerably less. And so based on the usage, we thought we'd put some language in. Applicant needs to propose a dust control plan, we need to review it, and that needs to be adopted as part of the process. So it can be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
Here's my question on some of the dust control stuff. Should we even think about a size limitation or not? I'm not sure what a 30-acre area that's nothing but gravel would look like. If we would even allow something like that, or even 10 acres or 5 acres for that matter. Should there be a size limit placed, maybe?
What would that look like?
On how much gravel you can have?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about with these, the possibility of these, the regulations that we just set forth not too long ago. Thank you. Those lots, could those be gravel?
They can't for our regulation, not for gravel.
Okay, but something that of that size, could they be?
And that was one of the things that we looked at when we adopted those, because most of those types of facilities, because of the acreage, they don't want to do pavement with curb and gutter. It would be prohibitively expensive, in their opinion. And so that's why they usually want to do gravel. So that was kind of the debate that we had at that time was, do we allow them to do gravel or do we require it to be paved? Ultimately, we landed on requiring it to be paved. But the larger it is, probably the more concerns you have about the gravel, but you also have more concern from the applicant as far as if they have to pave it versus being allowed to do gravel.
Catch me up, which side are we talking about?
I'm just thinking overall in general about the storage containers.
Mm.
You know, we require them to be paved for that very reason, because of their size. But we don't mention anything about the size here. Now, that small lot that we approved not too long ago, which was probably less than an acre, even that, I don't think dust is a big deal with a gravel lot that size. But when you start looking at 5, 6, 10 acre lots that are nothing but gravel, that's a significant dust issue. So do we limit the size of these things, or do we just leave it alone and just kind of approve it as they come in?
Right now, for gravel, it would have to be approved, so we would be able to regulate that on a case-per-case basis without putting it into, yes.
But that goes back to hers, it says give them some direction before they get here. Because I know the expense and money involved in getting to this point is extreme. And then for us to come up and say, no, you can't have gravel, you can't have a gravel area, you have to pave everything.
But aren't we saying that already, that you can't have a gravel area, and if you want it, you have to apply for a special use permit? I think an applicant's gonna understand that's gonna be subject to scrutiny and could be denied.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they wanna move forward with the cost to get to this point, then.
Yeah, I personally think, I see it as being very difficult, or rather difficult, to try to put ahead of time to put a size restriction. I don't know. I see that as difficult.
Especially when we may not know the size of some projects in the future.
I agree.
Or the
I think
use.
it's a good point.
Yeah.
Or the use.
I don't-
I mean,
Mhm.
if you've got a storage lot where it's not actively used, something gets there that sits
Mhm.
there for a while, it's being stored, and say it's 30 acres, you may have fast vehicular traffic traversing the site to
Mhm.
get to some spot to put something where it's going to be stored. We may want to see some paving on that for dust control alone. I mean, if it's that big,
Mhm.
you may have interior paving, but allow gravel for storage, and then, and reduce the cost of having to pave the whole thing, and the environmental impact of the runoff from a huge site
Mhm.
could be mitigated by having portions of it gravel. So I think the case by case is going to be the big
Okay.
thing here.
And
I'd like
having
to
us-
provide as much input as we can or in advance, but I think what we've got here is going to let us learn. We're going to have to learn about dust control measures and what's effective and what's not, because I don't think we really know.
Well, and the fact that we're requiring to be paved unless we determine that the gravel surface is appropriate, so I mean, I guess that will work. So I just didn't know if there was something that we wanted to let somebody know that say, hey, if you're this size, don't even consider gravel. You know, but if it comes down, if they want, like Commissioner Copeland said, if they want to go ahead and try for the special use permit, that's their choice.
Which we have approved at least 2, if not more, in the last 6 to 12 months. That has come before us.
Mhm. Okay.
Including the one that Mr. Corner, is it Mr. Corner, is that right?
Yes.
Mentioned.
Right.
Yeah.
We proved that.
Yeah, because it was such a small lot.
Site, not a lot of activity on it.
Exactly.
There were mitigating reasons why it would work there.
Okay.
I just want to say, I'm sympathetic to the property owner's comments from earlier, but I think we've got a good balance of being able to protect the residential property. It's certainly a unique situation where you have an industrial property that's there first, and then residential develops around it. But I think, there's still some leeway, and, there's always processes if there is a hardship to get some variances. So I think these rules do a good job of protecting the residential properties.
And we're also laying out what's expected before it comes before us. and to know that if they are proposing gravel, that there will have to be a special use permit.
Yep, okay.
Well, and to address something that Mr. Corner brought up, personally, my view gives a lot of weight to what's there first. So if there's residential zoning there first, then anyone that comes in with a industrial zoning, they should know that they're going to have a high standard to meet. If there's industrial there first, then they have some expectations. They don't know what's going to come around. So the residential in that case, if it comes in near there, then there's going to be an anticipation for what they're going to have nearby them. Does that make sense? I personally, when I'm looking at things, I tend to look at what's there first. What reasonable expectation would I have? If there's no zoning in place when I buy a property and there's no zoning next to me, I don't know. I'm taking some risk there. If I want to put an industrial site in next to residential, I know I'm going to have a higher hurdle that I'm going to have to jump over. So that's just me. I don't want to speak for all seven, but
I think that's a good point. I agree.
And I think that we did discuss that property very thoroughly, and there was a lot of give and take from all of us up here. And we tried to match, the character of the neighborhood, because you do have commercial and industrial uses on the west end, and then residential, and this is on the east, and this was in between them. So, let's move forward with the item before us, Title 18. Does staff have any questions on the guidance regarding the definitions, or?
I think I understand.
Okay. May not have been exactly clear. I think we have some differing opinions, but I think that we can get there with some further discussion and some examples.
Mr. Commissioner, I would move that we forward the amendments to Title 18, amending the requirements for outdoor storage, to the City Council with a recommendation for approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Copeland and seconded by Commissioner Pop to forward amendments to Title 18 to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Our final item this evening is conduct a public hearing to consider amendment to Chapter 18.165 landscaping for the purpose of amending landscaping regulations and adding landscape design standards. Staff presentation, then we'll get to the public hearing.
Okay, to give you a little background here, the Gardner Design Standards, as most of you remember, were adopted in December of 2010. The standards so far just include the introduction and the chapter on architectural design requirements. The intent was to come back later and adopt additional chapters on landscaping and site design, as well as some other things. The first one that was identified to be done next was landscape design. The amendments would include the new chapter for the design standards, as well as amendments to the municipal code, Chapter 18.165 landscaping. We do have a draft of the new chapter of the design standards, which was in your packets for you to review, but we don't have these amendments ready to be adopted tonight. As we've done with several other amendments recently, we have had a review committee meet and go over the proposed amendments, which has not been done with this particular one, and so we wanted to have an additional public hearing before we got too far with it, to go ahead and give the public an opportunity to comment while it's still in draft form. The intent of the landscape design standards is to complement the architectural design standards, improve overall site design and visual quality, implement themes from the Main Street Corridor Plan, and we wanted to make sure they're practical to apply and not overly restrictive. We will provide additional considerations for trees. Right now we have a certain number required, but this would begin to address how these trees are placed on the site, as well as their species, and getting some diversity of the species. This would also address shrubs and other landscaping, which are really not addressed by the current code, hardly at all. Some questions that we asked you to consider after you've read the current draft. How effective do you think the current draft would be at accomplishing the goals that we had stated previously? Did you see any red flags or concerns regarding implementation of the standards? Are there any concepts or items that are difficult to understand? Anything missing that you'd like to see added? Any input from the public tonight, or any other comments or suggestions that you may have? Then over the next month, the consultant and staff will continue to work on the draft based on the discussion, as well as to develop the changes to the municipal code section. Staff will also request review by a few key stakeholders, since we don't have a formal committee, to get some input from people in the field who have a stake in it. And then our plan is to have a new draft available for the April 24th meeting, depending on how things go over the next month. So staff recommends conducting the public hearing, discussing the draft, and then continuing the public hearing and consideration to the April 24th meeting. Any questions?
Thank you. At this time, we would like to open the public hearing. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak regarding this item? I believe at this time, instead of closing the public hearing, I think we would like to do discussion, and then since the draft is not ready yet, then we will continue it at the end of our discussion. So could you move the slide back to the questions? Six questions before us, so that we can start working on any of them, or any questions, comments now?
When I was looking through this, I think it was on parking areas, it's like page number 5. Actually, what I'm looking at is page number 6. We have item number 7, it says primary landscaping material shall be trees that provide shade or are capable of providing shade at maturity. Shrubs, hedges, and other plant materials may be used to complement the trees, but cannot be in the sole means of landscaping. And the very next one, lighting for parking lots may be contained within a parking lot landscaped area, provided the landscaping and trees at maturity as maintained shall not obstruct illumination. I'm telling you, a 30-foot tree is going to take care of any 30-foot pole with a light on it. Basically, I think what we're trying to say here is that we don't want light poles in the islands. I mean, because if you put a light pole in the middle of an island and then you have to put a tree there, you're going to have problems as that tree gets older. So I think we need to look at something either to say, take the light pole out of the, light poles can be placed in the parking lot anywhere, just not in the islands.
Because islands have to be landscaped.
With a tree. Because we're in number 7, we're requiring a tree to be in the island. So you either have a 30-foot pole with a light on it, or you have at some point 10 years down the road a 30-foot tree. Which one
you
would you
have
like?
a 15-foot tree, you're still gonna...
Still going to have issues.
Yes.
So the light poles can be placed out in the parking lot, put it on a concrete base or whatever so it doesn't get damaged, but I think we need to be a little bit more clear about lighting for parking lots if we're going to be talking about the lighting. I know we've got lighting as one of the design standards at some point, but we're getting there.
Don't step over yourself.
I know. So, but I think if we're doing that, and while you're thinking about that, at the very top of that page, it says landscape islands fences shall be no less than 171 square feet or 9 feet wide. That means it's a 9-foot by 90, or 19-foot landscape island minimum. I would rather just say 9 by 18 to some degree. I know that we're talking about islands in the middle of the parking lot. So, I'm not sure why we even need to put the 171 square feet or 9 foot wide. Because no matter what, if it's 9 feet wide, it has to be 19 feet long or longer. So, because it's 9 feet wide, which is parking lot style, one parking lot stall. It's 9 foot by 19 foot. And usually when you have these, you're usually going, if it's a double loaded corridor, you're going to have two in the middle of a parking lot island. Because if it's not in the middle of the parking lot, it's not considered an island. It's going to be considered like one of those little peninsulas or whatever you want to call those things. So, these are just two of the small things that I think we need to be a little bit more clear on.
And actually, in the next one too, where it talks about pedestrian walkway, I think we're missing some words towards the end of that one.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say what shall be, or if there's a walkway, it shall be at least 10 foot wide.
So, I think if we say something about the lighting, then it just needs to say that we do not want the lighting in the landscape islands. Because we've precluded to put a light post in there. And we specify lighting for parking lots. So that in itself implies a 30-foot pole with a light on the top of it. Just something to think about.
So you're suggesting number 8 should read, lighting for parking lots may be contained within a parking area provided it's not a landscaped area?
I think that's probably something that we need to do.
And then on the islands, were you suggesting 171 square feet is too
No,
big, or?
I'm just saying that we're kind of stating the same no matter what we do. I mean, we're saying it has to be 171 square feet or 9 feet wide. Well, if it's 9 feet wide and it has to be no less than 171 square feet, then it has to be 19 feet long. There's no other way it works.
I think the square footage gives you the option of doing a narrower one,
Yeah.
longer.
Or 9 feet wide.
Could it be longer, though, than 2 parking stalls, front to back?
Well, but we also say somewhere, if I remember right, that landscape medians shall be at least 10 feet wide. That's not an island. I thought there was something else somewhere where we had a minimum width for those because it talks about tree coffins. Anything with 5 feet wide, you try to put a tree in, the tree's going to die because it's just not going to get enough water. I remember seeing it. Maybe it wasn't in this one. Maybe it was something else I read.
Well, the way I read this, you have to have a 9 foot wide minimum. No less than 171 square feet or 9 feet wide.
If there's an or there, it's not and or.
Yeah, the way I interpret that is that it must meet both of those.
I mean, with the or there, if it's 9 feet wide,
It's going to be
or also
18.
it's going to be 19 feet long.
But you could go wider.
You can go wider
Go
or
wider
longer if you want
and
to. But
not as long, not 19 feet. But you can't go less than 9 feet wide.
or 171 square feet.
What you don't want is someone going in and saying, okay, well, I got 4 feet left. I can't put a stall in there, so I'll put landscaping in there and I'll make it, 60 feet long. And we'll call it landscaping, and then the trees are gonna die, but we'll just call it landscaping.
Mhm.
What we're doing is preventing that here,
Yeah.
so.
It'd
Setting
be
the,
more fun clarifying.
Yeah, probably that whole
I mean,
section or that whole number.
no less than 9 feet in any
one
dimension,
direction.
and at least
Yeah.
171 square feet. That's basically what we're saying here, I think.
Mhm.
That was what we were attempting to say. We'll make sure it's clear.
Then there was another one for the planters. Where was that? Oh, it was on the facade. Where is that? Oh, I know, I just saw it. That was one of the things I wanted to talk about, because we don't specify if the planters that we ask for, or the areas in front of the building. I thought I had it highlighted, but I guess I don't. Property perimeter, collection areas. Building facade foundation.
What page are you?
Number 6. For commercial, number 1, under standards, for commercial and office building facades 25 feet in length or greater, the linear distance of landscape area shall be equal to or exceed 25% of the linear footage of the length of the building foundation or facade. Are we saying the total for the entire thing, or does it have to be one strip? Can it be broken up? Because, on a shopping center, if you've got a 200-foot facade, and you've got to have 50 feet of landscape area in front, does that have to be one solid piece, or can it be broken up into multiple pieces? We're not quite clear on that.
Yeah, the intent is for it to be able to be broken up, so we'll try to make that more clear.
Right, it's equal to, but we'll clear that.
Okay.
And where it says foundation/facade, if someone reads that as foundation, that would be the whole perimeter. Would it not?
Viewable by the public on the property or on adjacent property or from public streets, sidewalks, or trails shall be subject to the provision of the building facade foundation plans. So if it's on the right-of-way or something like that, then you need to have it.
Right, it specifically says, for commercial and office building facades, 25 feet or length, great, the linear distance of landscaping areas shall be equal to or exceed 25% of the linear footage of the length of the building foundation/facade. And I think if you took out foundation, you would just have facade, which was what you're going for. Is that correct?
See what you're saying.
I wouldn't want to have 25% of my whole foundation perimeter.
I think he was trying to refer back to the section, but when it actually starts out building facades that are viewable,
Mhm.
that's what you're wanting to tie it back into, so.
Right.
I just
And we're
forget
talking
about
about a
foundation.
facade, and
Cross it out.
you're talking about,
Yes,
Yeah.
it would make more sense to me if we took out the foundation. Unless you said at the foundation.
Here's where that was, on number 5, it says facade foundation landscape area should not be less than 25 square feet in size, at least 5 feet wide. If you plant a tree in a 5-foot wide, I've been told about this from numerous civil engineers, if you plant a tree in a 5-foot wide landscaping area, it will not get watered properly, and it will eventually die. They call them tree coffins. So,
got it.
do we exclude trees from the facade? From the front facade, or what? Or do we just leave it up to them to decide whatever they want to do? I just don't want them to put a tree out there and then have it dead, and then they just leave it there. But I know we're supposed to maintain all of that stuff, but they're gonna be replanting a tree every other year, because it's just not gonna grow.
So maybe this is okay, but then if they are planting a tree and then it needs to be.
That
even
minimum
larger.
9 feet wide, yeah, that 9-foot wide minimum. I mean, I'm not sure why they'd want to plant a tree in the front of their building anyway, but I would rather give them the option and allow it to at least survive than to not give them the option and have them put it in and have a dead tree in front of the building that they never replace.
That's why the city took out on the street, trees on Main Street.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
too big.
On page 9, can we use a different term than strip districts regarding a commercial and retail area?
That's pulled directly from the Main Street corridor plan, and it's a reference back to the strip district of the Main Street corridor plan.
But it's a good
There's
point.
not really a way around that unless you change the plan.
Maybe title it better, or title it the entire Main Street corridor.
We'll double check the title on that. It might have been commercial strip district.
Something more descriptive.
Yes.
Corridor strip district would work.
I know you have a lot on your plate already, but is there ever going to be a time where we need to re-review the Main Street corridor plan? How old is it?
It's over 10 years old, since it has not been implemented, and we're just now starting to work on that. I think as part of starting to implement it, we need to revisit it, since a lot has changed in the past 11 years.
I think so.
And just as another aside, I just wanted to let you know that last week at the city council meeting, there was some discussion about the downtown and parking, but what it was getting into was more of looking at sort of use and how we provide for parking for these spaces in this older corridor area. And one of the things that we highlighted is that looking at a comp plan, one of the things that we were wanting to look at was a downtown overlay, and then of course looking back at some of the other items that we've done in the past, such as the Main Street corridor plan. So I think the council is starting to understand some of the tie-ins that the bigger picture of the comprehensive plan and how that can help meet some of the needs in specific segments of town, such as the Main Street corridor strip district, and how that might, that plan might tie in. So we'll be given another run at that again during the budget process, just so you know.
Okay.
And this is still a public hearing, so if anybody would like to comment on any of these items. Any other comments or questions from commissioners?
I would certainly like to recommend it as you're thinking about this over the next couple of weeks. Get those comments to Amy as soon as possible so that she can work with our consultant on the cleanup. He's done an amazing amount of work for us and taken very well to the information we've given him to try and put this together, because this came from scratch. We weren't able to go find something else that really met our needs. So,
We gonna have any diagrams or anything like that in this?
yes,
Okay.
he's working on that.
Well, it is recommended that we continue this, so that we can open up the public hearing again next time.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the public hearing and continue it until the April 24th, 2012 meeting.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Godwin and seconded by Commissioner Manley that we close the public hearing and continue it until the April 24th, 2012 meeting, because we cannot take an action on what has been presented to us at this time. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. At this time, we will continue the public hearing to our next meeting. Any other items from staff?
Just wanted to let you know that several of the commissioners have been participating, Mr. Godwin and Mr. Manley, on our sign code review committee that's been established. First night was last week, and it was primarily a presentation of what staff and our consultants from BRR architects have been looking at for about the last year now. It's been a little bit of a slow process for us, but I think it's been received well, and the discussion's been very good. We're not quite finished as of tonight. It was just not enough time for all the conversation that was going. We're going to be establishing an online feedback for the group to talk, and then we plan to get together sometime in the middle of April again to kind of button down the hatches so that we can be bringing that back to you on the April 24th meeting, hopefully. So a lot of good work has gone in from staff, especially Amy, Jim Sherman as well, and our consultants we're very happy to have on board for that. So if you have any thoughts or comments on that you would like, certainly talk to your fellow Commissioner Godwin or Manley about that. But I think by the time we're done, they'll be very well vetted when it comes to.
Any other questions or comments? Items for next month, I know we have at least 2 or 3. Do we have more on the horizon, or?
There's, I think, 3 on the April agenda, and no, we haven't reached the deadline yet for May, so.
If not, adjournment is in order.
I move we adjourn.
Second?
Moved by Commissioner Manley and seconded by Commissioner Pop that we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Should be somewhere. Yes. Yeah. I mean, heck, even if you had a little Kindle Fire, put them up on there.
Or if you need to change your 300.
Thank you very much.